If you're on the hunt for a new tent for motorcycle camping, or if you just want to develop a better understanding of all the features that work best, this video is going to explain all the features that work best for motorcycle camping so you can filter through all the options on your own and hopefully make the experience of tent shopping a little less daunting. This is a remake of an old video of mine with new and updated information, and it's also based on a chapter in my new book, The Fundamentals of Motorcycle Camping, which details all the intricacies of gear selection for motorcycle camping, as well as my best tips for dealing with bad weather, animals, food storage, and getting the most out of your motorcycle campouts. So if you're looking for a deep dive on that information, you can check that out, or if you just want to learn more about tents, stick around. Let's start with what a tent is. A tent is a portable shelter made of fabric that is supported by one or more poles, stretched tight by cords or loops, and attached to stakes driven into the ground. It's pretty straightforward. However, tent shopping can be overwhelming, and that is why I'm making this video. There are so many features and stats to look at, and if you want to avoid buyer's remorse on a potentially expensive investment in gear, then you want to have a pretty good understanding of what features to look for motorcycle camping. Weight and bulk concerns are not as much as through hikers and maybe a little more than car campers. There are other aspects and needs that may be more important, especially considering we are likely covering more ground than through hikers and will possibly be camping in many different terrains and climates, sometimes unpredictably so. A good tent should keep you protected from bugs and keep you dry in the rain, and getting a good night's sleep is super important on a motorcycle trip, so it's important that you can sleep comfortably and safely. So let's go through the different considerations when choosing a tent for motorcycle camping, starting with season ratings, styles of tent, and then pack size and weight, livable space, followed by fabrics and coatings, and finally we'll discuss other considerations for tent shopping. Season rating refers to the number of seasons a tent is meant to be used in. 2 seasons mean spring and summer, 3 seasons would be spring, summer, and fall, and 4-season tents will of course carry you into the winter months as well. There is a direct correlation between season rating and weight. The more seasons a tent is rated for, the heavier the material will be, and the sturdier the poles will need to be in order to support that, meaning the whole deal will get heavier and bulkier for colder climates. It is probably overkill to go with a 4-season tent, as most of us are not winter camping on our motorcycles, so the balance will probably be between 2 and 3-season options. 1 to 2-season tents are going to cover camping needs in spring and summer, which will fit a lot of motorcycle camping needs, unless you live in cooler climates or if you push the limits of the camping season. Me personally, I'm a cold sleeper, so I like to be as warm as possible for the most comfort. So I like to go with a 3-season tent if possible. If you're a cold sleeper, or if you know you're going to places at higher altitude and there may be potential for wintry conditions, you may want to consider a 3-season option as well. 3-season tents will cover almost all needs for motorcycle camping and seems to be kind of the sweet spot. Next, let's go over tent styles. There are a few to choose from and some that work better than others. Tent style will be an important consideration as it will determine livable space and ease of setup, as well as potentially affecting pack weight and size. Some tent styles require stakes to set up, which can prove difficult in sand or hard surfaces, while others require no stakes and can be set up on any surface, but these may be slightly heavier in terms of pack size. The cabin-style tent will have vertical straight walls and typically have a peaked roof on top. These tents are good for standing up in, but they are not great in the wind because of their height and straight walls. These are not a great choice for bad weather, and they pack pretty large. However, if being able to stand up is a priority, then you may want to consider one of these, especially if you're taking shorter trips where it will be easier to predict the weather you might encounter. Lean-to or A-frame tents are a lightweight and fairly simple option. The major downside is that they are not freestanding, and you will need to get stakes in the ground to set these up. That is a big disadvantage in the soft sandy terrain or where the ground is too hard to get a stake in. There are some other options that integrate with motorcycles which cover half of the stakes you would need, which helps. If you're looking for a simple and lightweight option, this is good for you. Hoop style can be lightweight and sturdy in wind or other bad weather. They are usually low to the ground, which helps them perform better in high wind, although moving around in one can be difficult depending on the size. Hoop style is a semi-freestanding tent, which is a mix of freestanding and needing stakes on at least one side to fully set up the tent. They pack small because they don't require as many poles for the tent to offer the space that it does, but this style also tends to be somewhat small. If you're looking for a small pack size with decent livable space, this is a great option. It's the style of tent that I have been using for the last year or so. It works well and I've been happy with it, but I actually just recently switched back to my favorite style, which brings us to Dome-style tents. These are completely freestanding, meaning no stakes required, although you will need some stakes to stretch out the vestibule or rainfly, but if you can't use stakes for some reason, your tent will still work. They pack pretty small for the livable space they offer, and they can withstand heavy winds much better than cabin style. There are a lot more slopes in the roof, which makes them better in the wind, but also means shorter height inside. You will get some headroom in the middle, but they pitch down quickly from the high point. Another advantage to freestanding is that they're easy to move once you've set them up, or in the morning when you want to shake out the dirt from inside your tent. They retain their shape when you pick them up off the ground, which is really nice. If you're looking for an option that's always easy to set up and offers good livable space with decent pack size, this is a great option and seems to be ideal for motorcycle campers that aren't concerned with shedding every possible pound or ounce from their panniers. Which brings us to the next category, pack size and weight. Depending on your setup and style of riding, this may be one of the biggest factors in choosing a tent, but you will likely not find anything that weighs less than 2 pounds without spending a lot of money. Anything in the 2-pound range is considered ultra lightweight and will probably be semi-freestanding, so that means it will require stakes. Usually lightweight tents are also pretty delicate and require a bit of finesse to avoid damage and tears, and to get the most out of the life of your tent. At about 2.5 pounds, options will increase and prices drop to a much more reasonable level. The balance between weight and comfort rise along with price, so you will need to determine the value of shedding a pound or two without sacrificing too much space. As far as pack size, pole length is a determining factor, but I find it best to store the poles on their own and pack the tent, fly, and footprint separately. Of course, if size and weight are not important factors for your setup, then there are tents that offer all sorts of features, sizes large enough for parking your motorcycle in, and plenty of luxury options to enjoy your time inside your tent and around camp. Livable space is another factor to examine. First, you need to know how many people will be sleeping inside the tent, because tents are sold by body capacity in 1, 2, 3, and up. Whatever the number is, you should purchase a tent with enough space for one extra person. In other words, if you travel solo, you should be looking at a 2-person tent to avoid feeling cramped and to allow for some gear storage inside your tent. 2 people should be using a 3-person tent for maximum comfort. You might want some gear inside the tent, such as a jacket, helmet, and possibly boots, if you want to keep bugs out of them and keep them dry overnight. The vestibule, which we'll talk about in a minute, is a good place to store some gear, but it will still be exposed more than it would be inside your tent. Also, if the weather gets bad, you may be spending more time in your tent than you expected. It's nice to be able to stretch out a bit and move around. And if you're sleeping 2 up in a tent, the number of doors is also important. If someone has to get up in the middle of the night, it's much easier to have your own door and not have to crawl over someone else in the middle of the night to get out of the tent. Rainflies are related to space because these create your vestibule, but there is more to them than that. A rainfly is the fabric that goes over the tent, creating a weather barrier and helps keep the warmth in. There are 2 styles to choose from, roof only and full coverage. Roof only style is exactly what it sounds like, only the upper part of the tent is covered and the walls of the tent itself are the weather barrier. This means that the tent will not be made of mesh panels and the airflow will be restricted because of this, though most have a double panel door that allow you to open the door with a screen or mesh panel to help with airflow. I don't recommend this style at all for motorcycle camping. They are really only good for fair weather camping and don't save all that much weight, generally speaking. Full coverage will cover the entire tent from the roof to the ground, and these styles offer extra space in the form of a vestibule. A vestibule is the storage space created by your rainfly. It's the area just outside of your tent but still covered. It's a great place for storing gear that doesn't need to be in the tent with you, but that you still don't want exposed to the elements. A vestibule can be on either one side only or possibly on each side of the tent depending on design and how many doors there are. How much area you will need depends on what you want to store in it. Typically, I'm keeping my chair under there so it's dry in the morning, and also my duffel bag. Everything else is either in my cases on the bike or in the tent with me. At a minimum, it is nice to have a covered space to get in and out of the tent in case of rain, where you can enter the vestibule and sit in the tent with your feet out of the rain to remove your boots and finish getting inside the tent without getting soaked. Next, let's talk about fabrics and coatings briefly. Denier is a word you may see, which is a measurement of the density of fibers, and basically the higher the denier, the denser and more durable the fabric will be, and also heavier. When shopping for tents, you'll find denier ratings for different fabrics. The tent, rainfly, and floor of the tent may all have different denier ratings. For the floor, you should look for the higher denier fabrics to make sure you're buying a durable tent. The fly and walls of the tent are less critical. If you're looking for ultra lightweight, deniers will be lower and therefore fabrics less durable. Thread count is another term you might see. This is the number telling you the number of threads, both vertical and horizontal, within a 1-inch area. That means that 300T will have 300 individual strands in 1 inch of the fabric. This number does not directly relate to strength of the fabric, as denier will also play a part in that equation. A higher thread count is referring to a tighter weave of strands and therefore creates a denser fabric. If you don't want to geek out on all these numbers, just feeling the tent will give you a pretty good idea on its durability, and comparing that to the weight of the tent, you should be able to tell if it's worth the price tag. The bottom line is that the heavier the tent fabric is, the more durable it will be. What is more important than these stats is to look at what coatings are used on the fabric. Coatings come in waterproof and/or water repellents. Nylon and polyester are not waterproof fabrics, which poses a major problem in the rain and condensation. A waterproof coating will be measured in millimeters and is a measurement of how much water the treated fabric can hold before it leaks through. This rating can range from about 800 millimeters to 10,000 millimeters. To be considered waterproof, look for a rating of 1,500 millimeters or higher. Tent floors also need to be looked at. You want to make sure that the tent has a bathtub-style floor in case of rain. Tent floors will often be made of a different material than the walls, and you should look for a floor fabric that continues vertically at least a few inches and connects with the wall fabric off the ground. This prevents a seam from being needed at a place that is susceptible to heavy water if it rains. Seams are another part of the tent you will want to inspect, particularly around the floor area and the rain fly, or anywhere that may be exposed to rain. Seams should be taped, meaning that after they're sewn together, a strip of tape is applied to enhance waterproofing and prevent leaks at the seam. If you're investing a lot of money in a tent, you want to make sure that you protect that investment. One of the most important ways to do that is with a tarp on the ground underneath your tent. You can opt for a footprint designed to fit your specific tent, which can be useful but also sometimes an expensive add-on. You can also save a little money by using a regular tarp that will be both inexpensive and super durable. Regardless of what you choose, a footprint or a tarp, it's important to have a barrier under the tent that prevents the bottom from rocks, sticks, and dirt. If you're using a tarp that's not fitted to your tent, you need to fold the excess material under the tent to avoid water from pooling onto the tarp and ending up under your tent. Tent stakes. No matter how expensive a tent is, the stakes that come with it are usually not the most durable option. They tend to bend easy, but there are stakes that can be bought separately from the tent that are much more sturdy and rugged and capable of withstanding repeated pounding into the ground. Look for stakes that are much thicker and sturdier to ensure that they last for a long time. Zipper quality is key. Some ultra-lightweight tents will have zippers that are a bit more sensitive and will require a bit of finesse to avoid damaging. YKK is a brand of zipper that seems to be the industry standard for most gear. YKK zippers are usually well made and typically smooth and durable and less likely to snag or stick than off-brand. Make sure to test out zippers on gear before you purchase the tent or other piece of gear to ensure that it operates smoothly and doesn't snag. Some have snag guards, for example, that keep the fabric from catching in the zipper. That's about it for tents. All the features and stats to look at and what they mean. We talked about what a tent is and how important it is. We talked about season ratings and how 2 to 3 season tents fit most motorcycle camping needs. We went over tent styles, the pros and cons of each, and again, my favorite is dome style because it's freestanding, making it easy to set up and making shaking it out in the morning easier. We discussed pack size and weight, livable space, and remember that you should always add one body to the number of people that will be sleeping in your tent to make sure you have room to move around and store a little gear. Remember to also look at coatings applied to the tent as well as tape seams to prevent leaking, and bathtub style floors for the same reason. For airflow, it's important to look for mesh panels and vents, and we also talked about some optional accessories you may want to purchase, like a footprint and better, more rugged stakes. And finally, we went over what you should look for in a zipper. So that is my tent purchase guide for motorcycle camping. Hopefully you found some useful information in here for your next gear purchase. And again, if you're looking for more information on motorcycle camping and everything you need to know to get the most out of your time and resources when motorcycle camping, check out my book, The Fundamentals of Motorcycle Camping. If you want to learn about choosing a sleeping bag for motorcycle camping, check out this video right here, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks for watching.